Welcome to the show. It's deep with the twist. We're laughing through the scriptures where humor coexists. Cultural, come on and take a seat. It's faithful and it's fun wherever it meets feet. Dive into the stories, hear the podcast call. It's Mormon stuff with a smile in the cultural hall.
Hello
And
welcome
to
this
crossover
episode
of
this
Week
in
Mormons,
and
the...
phenomenal.
Well, now, I don't want to do it like that anymore. It's the
All right.
Cultural Hall and
That's
this Week
right.
in Mormons.
Crossover. These are always fun, Richie, don't you think?
Yeah, I have audio level envy. For some reason, you're coming in a lot. I'm very distracted by the tech of which we're recording
Oh my
this.
goodness.
I'm coming in very, very low, and I want to make sure that you're not going to silence the voice of the Cultural Hall. I know you can hear me just fine, but look, you're loud, you're all the things, and the little wave indication would tell me that I'm barely saying anything.
Well, maybe somebody in your audience needs to send you a microphone, Richie.
No,
So-
listen, and what a disaster that's been.
Yeah, FedEx
being-
stole it, huh? From
Yeah,
the
I know.
Pharaoh.
So we're going to try, we do an episode called The Temple Ticker for people who have no idea what we're talking about. And we tried to send one of the Pharaoh himself, who knows all about the temples, eats, drinks, breathes, and sleeps temples,
Yeah.
goes to foreign lands to see the temple. And we tried to send him a microphone, and FedEx said, nope, he won't be having it. And now we're going to see what Brown can do for us. It's been sent that way. So we'll see.
Nice.
He should hopefully be
was
getting
there
that sometime
insurance on
today.
the package, or is it just gone?
I don't know. It was-
Jeez.
Listen, what a mess. What a mess. But next week, if you like the Cultural Hall, you follow us. We're going to be doing a temple prediction episode for the upcoming General Conference and all of the news about all of the temples of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that have any sort of update. He said it's been a little bit slow, so the predictions may be the vast majority of that episode.
Well, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And I just literally finished your most recent Articles of News episode with Verlin. And let me tell you something. You got something special with Verlin. He's a great
Okay.
co-host. All right. As a man who's constantly seeking co-hosts,
Mm.
you got something special in Verlin. I've often, thought of maybe just inviting Verlin on This Week in Mormons and not telling you. And
I
then
will
you just
stab
like
you.
turning on. But
Stab you. I will
you would feel
stab
deep
you.
betrayal. And I don't want to betray you, Richie. So
If he wants to go on, that's perfectly fine. But what may be very much a theme through this episode as we talk about some of the news, transparency matters, everyone.
that's right. So sorry, Verlin. You got yourself. You're part of the Cultural Hall brand. So we'll continue to listen to you there. So
He's pledged his allegiance to the flag that cannot be shown in the state of Utah because, lawmakers, that's a whole different thing. Anyway,
lawmakers.
have you been following that? Let's not get side tangent. I'm sorry. I've got lots
Isn't
of
that what we
things.
do here, Richie?
What?
Side tangent?
I know. I'm still very distracted that your audio is so much louder than mine. I'm cranked, pal.
You're cranked? I don't know what to tell you.
Okay,
Isn't it
all
through
right.
your system?
I don't have any.
I got
idea
nothing
what
over
the
here,
issue
man.
is. Okay,
You sound
sounds
great
like
to me.
fine. Great.
We'll make sure
good.
it all comes out in the wash. It'll be great.
Sure. You're gonna
So-
wash it out. Wash me out. I have to ask you. You're wearing a Leading Saints cap.
That's right.
Hey,
Got some
can I see the back of
swag.
that cap? Can I see the back of that cap? Okay.
It's nothing.
yeah. That is some swag.
Yeah, I didn't put the Cultural Hall logo on the back, Richie.
No, what I was wondering though is if you cheapened out and did the little nubbins so you can change the size of the hat.
Oh no, this is a Flex Fit, and it doesn't give me too bad of a headache. I got a large noggin,
Yes,
so
you do.
with all those
Is that
brains.
something that people can purchase?
No, I tried the swag thing with Leading Saints, and like nobody bought it. It was just like one headache to manage. It's like, okay, if you don't want to wear our stuff, then don't worry about it. But
Yeah.
so
I
But
feel
you
like
need some
with
swag.
religious stuff in swag, like you either have to go like full right or full left, and by that I
Mhm.
mean like you have to be like CTR rings or like Christuses or stuff like that, or you have to be like armies of Helaman ain't no mama's boys. Like you have to lean so far
Those
away
are the
on
days.
the other side of it. If you're just sort of like, I'm religious and I like this thing, and I want to share with people that I do this thing. I think that's the hardest space to be in.
Now, Richie, you'll notice that what color is this hat?
It's blue.
Royal blue. All right. This is
Okay.
cougar blue. You know
Sure.
why I got a blue, even though Leading Saints colors are crimson, even though, and anyways, I got a
was
royal
cheaper.
blue so I could wear it on the BYU cruise coming up in April.
Oh, geez. Yeah, sell me. Let's go.
Come on. It's going to be awesome.
Uh-huh.
And there's still room, folks. They got 50% off on cabins just to fill up the last few cabins. It's going to be an entire cruise ship full of Latter-day Saints.
Well, which is confusing to me because the devil's on the water.
Yeah, but can you imagine all of us raising our hand to the square? All those priesthood holders on that deck.
Yeah. It would be an urban legend to go down in infamy.
Yeah, and the three Nephites are not going to miss this opportunity.
No, they've already got.
They will be
their
on the
cabin.
ship.
Yeah. They got separate cabins.
If there's three old single men, I guess they could be married. But
hey, you don't know that they're now.
That's
Hang
true.
on, you
They
are
could be
making
on
a
their
lot. You
their
are making a
50th
lot
marriage.
of assumptions. How do you know that they're old?
Well,
I mean, they're old as far as age, but we don't.
Because
if you never taste of death, why do you assume that they're
I know
old?
they're old because when my uncle's friend's cousin's dog's owner, was saved by three men on snowmobiles, they were all men in their 60s.
Yes.
So that's how I know they're old.
Oh, okay. And they would want a separate cabin because they're always being lumped together.
I know.
It's not one of the three Nephites.
Yeah, I got to keep a low profile.
Individual. Yeah. Guys, do I have to share a room with Jerem again? Come on.
Jerem. That's a solid Book of Mormon name.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know the names of the three Nephites, do we?
You're asking the wrong guy, man. So,
well,
I don't think so.
Contact at theculturalhall.com if you know one of the three Nephites.
Well, and then there's isn't it John the Beloved, right? Is still roaming the earth.
Yeah.
So,
and assuming that Christ and his people were with all people, probably other people too that were like, death, no thanks. So I wonder if they have like a semi-annual general conference of those that have not tasted death and are like, hey, what are you going through? And they're like,
anybody else sick of this? Sick of mortality?
Yeah.
Really regretting your wish of remaining on the earth?
Yeah. That's right, Tuck. You bet, Tuck.
Tuck.
Some people will appreciate that. Others will go, why? Huh?
Why? Huh? Yeah.
Do you get it? Tuck Everlasting? That's where I was referencing.
Is that a movie? What is that?
No. Okay. Never mind. The only other thing that I wish for your hat was that you had kept the brim flat. I feel like
it's pretty flat.
It's a little bit more on brand if you would have just flat brimmed it completely.
What if I wear it askew?
Oh, yeah. Get yourself a clock to wear around your neck, too. Things well with you, sir?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I got that BYU cruise coming up.
How do people, we'll obviously leave a link for that in our show notes. Any idea on like entrance cost? I'm sure you can spend more.
Well, if you go to BYUcruise.com, you can see the details and all the famous people coming on the cruise. I haven't got my picture up there yet, if you're wondering. But but if you use the code donor50, you can get 50% off on the remaining cabins. So
okay.
Yeah, do it.
It's the official cruise of BYU Athletics. Here's what I know about you, not athletic. Can you expound, please?
Yeah, I did not go the route of athleticism to get into BYU. I couldn't even get in with my scholarship. So yeah, my academia knowledge and background. So
I'm going to rattle off some of this. I know that you don't care, and you've probably talked to it a bunch. But Jim or Fredette, one of them, Kalani Satake. That's when you're going to be able.
I will be interviewing him. Yes.
Jim McMahon. That's a big deal.
Yeah, non-Latter-day Saint.
Yeah. Gifford Nielsen. You can talk
very
to
Latter-day
him about,
Saint.
What's that?
He's very Latter-day Saint.
Yeah, very Latter-day Saint. You can talk to Gifford about the Black 14.
Ooh,
He's done
that's
an incredible amount around that. The BYU Wyoming football players. In fact, I would dare say he has spearheaded much of the church's thing. Now, here's the thing. Jennifer Rockwood, who people may not know, and Heather Olmstead. I'm scrolling, and that is the first couple women that you finally see, and then you start to see some other ones. But this is a lot of people. The Cougarettes are going to be on the cruise ship.
That's right. There's a bunch of ladies there. We'll have the
Greg
cheerleaders.
Rubel.
And scroll down, you'll see a former guest of the Cultural Hall.
Go on.
Steve Solberg.
Oh, yeah. Going to be some entertainment.
You've had the Truman Brothers on, haven't you?
Yeah, you bet I have.
Mm-hmm.
David Osmond. You got to have an Osmond. Who are Tom and Gail Holdman? Who are these people? Oh, I click on it, and they are renowned stained glass artists. Okay.
Oh, yeah. They do stained glass for temples.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm. So it's gonna be a party. Can you imagine 2,000 plus sober Latter-day Saints? I mean,
all on the ship. So I have to wonder genuinely from a business perspective if they're losing money on the cruise ship because
of alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah, and gambling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they give them a heads up. I've actually been on a full chartered Latter-day Saint cruise, and it was almost I'd look forward to walking through the casino area because the dealers would just be like twiddling their thumbs, right? And then you get the one person with no shame, like, playing blackjack or something in the corner.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, I think they give them a heads up, like, hey, just so you know, if you need to add a premium on the final invoice, because we will not be drinking alcohol, at least the vast majority of people,
Yeah, interesting. So, you just add 10%.
That's what we do.
So anything with you for a general conference, things that you're looking forward to coming up, any of that kind of stuff?
I'm looking to go to the Saturday morning session. My wife, we've been trying to get the kids there. I got a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old, and so they're kind of in that impressionable age where those memories will be powerful. So
they've never been?
I think I can't remember. I think my 13-year-old's been, but not my 10-year-old baby.
That surprises me. That would be to me what I would think you would, like 8 years old. Like, you are baptized. Here we go. Let's go.
Yeah, that's not the case, but
no shame in the game. It just that is the sort of thing you feel very intentional as far as those things. To me, that is the perspective that I get of you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
In the past, I've really encouraged the This Week in Mormon host to like do some conference predictions leading up to General Conference, but I think just the nature of the way the church has shifted, they just do the Friday afternoon, press release drop. I feel like they don't announce things. Like, there's not, other than temples, right?
Sure.
There's no big announcements that come from General Conference. Do you feel that?
Yeah, for the most part, certainly in the last couple of years. But as you and I both know, and again, teasing some news, it is very much up to the person in charge as to what they're going to do or not do. And it seems like President Nelson is like, listen, conference is Christ time. Let's deal with the other stuff other times.
That's right. Yeah.
And I can support that.
Yeah, I kind of like that. We don't need to, speculate or like wait, you kind of get distracted from the core message by, waiting for the announcement or whatever. But
we can always speculate though.
That's true.
Always speculate.
That's true.
Well, let me just tell you briefly, one of the things that going on for me, I live in Taylorsville, Utah.
Love it.
For people who may not know who I am. I live in a house that was not very well cared for a hot minute. And so I'm still kind of pulling myself out of it. Been here a couple of years. And every spring, because of the amount of vegetation which we grow on property, trees mainly, we have to get a trailer from the county, that is Salt Lake County. It's a thing they do where you pay like $40, and if you promise to only put green waste in it, they will drop a big 20-foot dumpster in your driveway. They drop it, and they come and get it, and they fine you $1,000 if you put anything that isn't green waste in it. It's how they can get away with it.
How do you stop your neighbors from doing that?
Well, so you have to put, and that's a very, very valid concern. There's a little thing you can pull over the top of it.
Oh, yeah.
And you can essentially lock it down because neighbors have, in fact, put mattresses and other things in the dumpster in the dark of night and made it so that people do it. And it's stupid. Don't do that crap. But that for me is next week. So I'm looking forward to one day filling a 20-foot dumpster full of green waste. Yes, there we go.
That's some serious yard work. Richie.
feel like a gardener or a pruner or the master of my own vineyard. Actually, I've thought about that multiple times, and I actually do feel that. I say it sarcastically,
absolutely.
but
You should listen to Jacob 5 as you work.
I will.
Yeah.
I actually will commit to doing that. I'll have so many hours that at some point I'll just be like, anything besides trying to catch up on leading saints with Kurt.
Oh, come
Please,
on.
anything.
Come on. You're so good at us at leading saints, Richie. And
I
at This
listen.
Week in Mormons.
I try
You
and
do.
catch up on everything. I try
You
and
do.
do all the things. Live and do my part.
And I can usually tell which episode you're on by some random passion-filled question that comes my way.
Yes. Yeah. You're like,
About a topic,
that
like,
was
oh.
about 6 weeks ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, is that it then? Should we be good? You want to start into news? You don't take a break, but for people listening to the
We can
Culture
take a
Hall, we're
break.
going to come back in the second half and do actual articles of news. Let me take just a moment to tell you all about bestdjinutah.com. That is the website where you can learn all about me. Oh, sure, you probably feel like you know me, but you know me in the Cultural Hall sense. I have a DJ company, now 6 of us strong, great event hosts, MCs, and DJs that can be able to make whatever event you have coming up absolutely spectacular, and hope you will reach out to us. Now you're thinking, well, wait a minute, Richie, I don't live in Utah. Would you travel? Absolutely, I would travel. Would they travel? Absolutely, they would travel. Whatever your event is, doesn't have to be a wedding or a community event. We can do all sorts of things. I can teach you line dancing. I can dance with you. We can do partner dancing. We can do all kinds of things, but we can't do any of it if you don't hit me up. You can go to bestdjinutah.com. You can fill out the form to get more information or get a quote, and then I will get right back to you. Find out why I'm so busy and why sometimes we don't get episodes of the Cultural Hall. It's all because of bestdjinutah.com. And here in the second half of Actual Articles of News, we do Actual Articles of News. Hit it, Peter.
You can't lose articles of news.
This Week in Mormons, folks, this is where you'll hear Peter Breinholt, beloved LDS musician, say, you can't lose articles of news. And now we go.
That's perfect.
Thank you,
Perfect.
sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Where do you want to go, Richie?
Here. I know where I think we should go because I think it's going to be the entirety of the episode.
Do we want to knock off some easy ones real quick?
No.
Okay. All right. So you introduce this then.
Okay. So knowing that you and I were going to be chatting, there were other people, other co-hosts of the Cultural Hall who said, oh, I definitely want to talk about the podcast Latter-day Struggles. Valerie is her name, Valerie Hamaker, and Matthew.
Nathan.
Is that his? What is it? Nathan. I knew it was like standard name, Nathan. And they have decided, as I understand it, to resign from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in anticipation of an upcoming stake-level disciplinary council. Am I accurate so far?
Well, I would call it a membership council, but yes, okay. Yes.
Yeah, the thing that used to be a disciplinary council that sounded a little too harsh, so we changed it to membership council.
That's right. And because the couple faced concerns from their local leaders over their podcast, which addresses faith crises among Latter-day Saints, they emphasized their commitment to helping those in faith crisis and felt a disciplinary process was unjust.
So I want to stress that I would like to talk about this from the perspective that I have, which is having someone who, and I can say, went through multiple disciplinary councils, because that's what they were called when I went through them.
Right.
And then it resulted in excommunication. I have been rebaptized a member of the church in 2010 and have actively had a temple recommend since then. So 15 years, which is crazy to me. I didn't realize until I just said that just now that that's how long I've been back.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thank you
awesome.
very much, sir. Only less than 10% comeback, so it's a big deal.
You're 10 of a kind.
Yeah, I'm 1 in 10. I'm 10%.
1 in 10, right?
In the upper 10th percentile. So my perspective on this will come from certainly how I felt within my experience. And then I will say this from the very onset, listening to, it's no longer at the recording of this episode, their latest episode. They have like a premium content one that I didn't want to pay for to hear them answer questions, but they laid out their entire story. There's a link for it in the show notes if you want to listen to it. I listened to that entire thing, and if I may, as a millennial, say, I'm so triggered. I found myself so triggered by some of the things that were said within it. So for people who don't know you, the perspective you come from, you have
Yeah.
been in a stake presidency, not a stake president, but
Right.
have also been a bishop.
Yes. So I've been involved in many disciplinary councils, as they were called, and yeah, that's all they were called back when I served. So yeah, I think we have a variety of perspective there. I've also listened to that episode
Mhm.
of the and I would admit there were some parts that maybe I wouldn't say triggering, but very concerning about how maybe leaders proceeded through this. But I always love to walk into these scenarios realizing we will never get the bishop side of the story, the
Sure.
stake president side of the story. And I bet if we did, we would say, oh, okay. Well, that makes a little more sense. Not that I still agree with the tactics and approaches and the ways that leaders went about it. However, usually 9 times out of 10, most of the time, I mean, sometimes 10 times out of 10, it's the like, oh, my perspectives completely shift by hearing both sides of the story. So we don't have that luxury.
Right. So the vast majority will be personal experience and then what they have shared as far as what has occurred. I don't know that I want to spend, I joked around about saying like this is the rest of the episode. I don't know that I want to spend a lot of time, but I do think that there are some interesting principles sort of around it. A question that I would ask you when you were serving as a bishop, like when, if you can recall, like when were you like, it's time for a membership council, as we would call them now, disciplinary council? Like what is either the guidance or what was your thing? Because lots of people meet with the bishop and say, I struggle with this, or I've done this, or whatever. Was there a guiding principle that you were like, I think we probably better do
Yeah.
a council?
Oftentimes it was, obviously referencing the handbook, that in the handbook has stipulated certain actions and transgressions that are more serious than others. So usually if something we are getting close to that line, I often used it as not necessarily like, oh, there's definitely going to be, a big decision coming down. But sometimes as a bishop just flying solo, nobody else is sort of, I'm the only one, on that side of the desk that's in the context other than the person involved. And so it was very helpful to say, you know what? I think it would be beneficial for all involved if I got some more people in the room to really process this. So with their permission and everything, and it was, you know, I I think really all the instances this happened is, the person was very open and welcoming for that process to take place, and I would explain
Mhm.
it and make sure they felt comfortable with it. And then having my counselors in the room to hear the whole story, get ask questions, and there were oftentimes I was completely shifted on the direction I would go, right? For more, one way or the other. Either I was more lax on the final decision, or maybe more intentional on the final decision the other way. Or there'd be times it'd be like, there's no action that needs to take place, but I felt better feeling like I treated the person and that process more sacredly by going through that process, right? So anytime I felt like, everybody would benefit by getting more people involved in this process with, the permissions that are necessary. So
One of the things that I should say, I've never listened to their podcast beyond this episode.
I've listened to several episodes of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And from what I understand, their mission is to help Latter-day Saints who are struggling, um, I would say in most part, probably with some sort of faith struggle or things like mixed faith marriages. These very serious, we don't really have a solid line on how to do it. It's difficult. Like that's the majority of what they would talk about.
Yeah, for sure. And Valerie, is it Valerie? Yeah, she's a licensed therapist, right? So
Mhm.
she came at a very therapeutic perspective. Usually, her husband was on as the co-host. Sometimes they'd have a guest, or just one of them would interview a guest, and he'd kind of be, a sounding board just to get the dialogue going. Um, and yeah, they would try and discuss, the struggles, and we know there's struggles there. There's tough dynamics. There's tough doctrine. There's tough theology. There's tough culture. All the things. With that said, I'll probably just kind of add this to mix it up a little bit. From my perspective, I've probably listened to at least 50 of their episodes.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
would never recommend that resource to a loved one who is really struggling with some of these concerns. So with that said, we can go into the story as far as how their local leaders handled it, ways that the bishop stake president could have approached it differently. There's a lot of that. However, when I am not surprised with the direction that the church leaders took this, because I would not classify it as a faith promoting, helpful resource for individuals in our faith community who are maybe struggling with doubt.
So let me ask you this about that then. Why? Like, is it so? Because certainly in just listening to their story and what I feel like sometimes is difficult for members of the church or just people in general is that if we're not for them, we're against them.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of therapy, and they talk about this a lot, where they're like, well, you should tell them to go back to church. You should tell them to be more faithful. You should tell them. And that's not how therapy works. Therapy is like, well, what do you think you should do? And then you do, the things that you feel drawn to do. But short of like telling them to go, is this a product of something being like, well, then don't go, stop going to the church, leave the church then? Because I didn't get, based on their explanation, their episode about it, that they ever were like, yeah, you just need to leave the church. You need to not be there.
Right. And that's where, and this has happened in sort of this, has happened several times with different platforms, right? Or individuals who have podcasts or whatever. And they often go to this place of like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm just trying to help people. I've never said the church is bad. I've never told someone not to go to church, but there's a lot of words you can use that's going to infer that without straight up saying it. Okay.
Sure.
And so oftentimes the tone of uh, this Latter Day Struggles podcast is often from a victim standpoint, as far as I am a victim of the church. These people struggling in the church are victims to the church, and the church is somewhat of a predator, even though they don't use those words. It's really hard to stimulate positive development and process when you're in that victim mentality, right? Now, I'm sure they may disagree with me, but it's really hard to say this. Here's the three things that's a problem with this podcast or what they were doing. But I could listen to an episode, that right there, the way they said that, the way they framed that, right? So, for example, or they go to a place of saying, why, we haven't been against the church. Like, why are you coming at us, right? Or what am I trying to say? But the point being is like, oh yeah. So, or we're just trying to help, right? But there's a big difference of trying to help, like on a personal matter or as a therapist, and creating a public platform, standing on that platform, projecting a message of the church is actually kind of a predator and you're kind of a victim to the church if you're in this demographic or experiencing this, and so be really careful. So to me, I'm like, no, there's nothing wrong with you helping people. There's nothing wrong about your approach per se, even though I definitely don't agree with it fully. However, when you have a public platform and you stand on that platform and you are stimulating doubt, which I would absolutely say there was a stimulation of doubt and so forth, then that's going to be the problem. The minute you step off that platform and continue to help people, there are so many ways, and both of us, sort of know this dance and game. Like, we've been in this podcasting world for 10 plus years. We know how, with leading saints, there are things privately that I feel like, man, I really struggle with this in the church and this dynamic and that cultural thing. And I wish it didn't say that in the handbook. And right, I can go there and have a lot of empathy there, but I'm never going to stand on my leading saints platform and say, this needs to change or else, right? When in reality, it's much more nuanced. There's so many more dynamics that in general, when you're speaking generally, you've got to be, I think you just have to show more respect and empathy towards all involved, including the institutional church. I don't know if that's making sense, but
yeah. So as it's a couple things that I think are sort of that I wish to address from what you said. So for instance, a dear friend of mine from high school, she ended up leaving the church. Not, let me clear the water, not from anything that I did. One of the things that she, when I asked her, and she said, "Thank you for asking. No one ever asks." That's a diatribe for another time. But she said, you know what? It was the intersection between Masonic ritual and Joseph Smith. Couldn't do it. Out. Right. That was a struggle for me and out. Okay. A while back, this is probably a couple years ago, I did an interview with 2 of 3 authors who had written a book about the intersection of the Masonic Temple and the prophet Joseph Smith. I didn't say, oh, yeah, this is right, this is accurate, but I also didn't say, oh, this is not right, this is not accurate. Just presenting information about that from the perspective of people who have written and study and say, we know this because this, we know this because this. I think that some people could say, you're sharing difficult information that I know has led people to leave the church, and then could be like a non-faith positive type of show or podcast. But I think that anything could. Well, how that relates is, I think that, calling it what it is, like LGBTQ issues within the church, is difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think that there are, from a therapy perspective, like there are things that are, if you do not feel safe in a particular congregation or a particular space, and you say to someone, if you don't feel safe, do not put yourself in an unsafe space or situation. I think that that is, I think that that is valuable information and guidance from a therapist to someone.
Yeah.
But it could also be construed as, oh, they're telling me not to go to church.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that that's, to me, again, having not listened to any episode beyond this, like that, about that part of therapy, to me, I guess, is like, listen, if you are struggling with this, I think that it is okay to take a break. And many people have benefited from taking a break. The prodigal son, all of these other people that we could list off have taken a break, have come back, and have been that much firmer because of it. But we get so scared of the, you're not telling them to be lockstep every Sunday. Is that all right? Is that okay? Maybe we shouldn't allow you to do that.
Right. Yeah. So what comes to mind here is, and I've even when I was bishop, I remember an instance or two where I even encouraged somebody, maybe it's time you just take a break from the grind of this faith experience, because I call it sort of the analogy of the bicycle, where so many individuals, because of their life experience, they get a negative framing of the church and the theology and the doctrine, whether it's LGBT issues or mental health issues, and then they dress up. They start putting on these principles in the method of a scuba diving suit, and then they get on a bicycle and attempt to ride the church bicycle in scuba gear. And it's sort of like, wait a minute, at some point along this path, you picked up messages that are not helpful for you pedaling that bike. So first step is you need to get off the bike and figure out, is this the right suit I should be wearing for a positive life, right? So with all that said, there's a big difference from a therapist meeting with somebody, or even a bishop, a church leader, and saying, I think your mental health is so triggered in a negative way with your church experience, you maybe need to take a break and do that. That's much different than somebody having an online platform and saying, the church makes LGBT individuals want to end their life, right? Wait a minute, time out. Maybe that's a little bit too far of value, because I can show you hundreds of LGBT individuals who the church has actually helped them very positively. I can show you research studies that show actually a life in a committed, covenant keeping relationship with the church and Jesus Christ is very positive for that mental health, right? So, but if that individual has a mental health concern, yeah, they need to talk with a therapist, and that may lead to them taking a break from the church. But to generally state that, that's where you get into trouble.
Do you feel like general statements like that aggressive? Because in that case, sure. If it's like, hey, if you're LGBTQ, you need to leave the church and figure out if there's a place that you could be in it. Like that sort of like direct, okay.
Yeah.
But if it's like, hey, you need to look at, if the people that you're engaging with are positive for you, and evaluate whether or not that is a safe space for you to be in, that seems like a far different cry from the first.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. And I would say a lot of the messages on this podcast were more leaning that way. Right. And I don't have a list of them or whatever, but even, I think in that episode we both listened to, they referenced the fact that they felt that the church was, I'm not going to quote them perfectly, but that there was enough transparency in the financials of the church. So they made a decision to not pay tithing,
Sure.
that they would donate that 10% elsewhere. Right. Now, again, in a personal one-to-one relationship, even with me as a bishop, if someone came in and said, actually, this is how I feel, we could talk about that. And I'd probably maybe even get to a place like, great, let's call you a full tithe payer, right? But to create this movement generally on a public platform to say, this is what we're doing, this is how we do tithing, right? I would, whether I believed in that or not, or was doing that, I would never, communicate on public profile, because it's stimulating controversy, and it's stimulating a concern that maybe some people don't have a concern with the transparency of church funds or whatever it is. And now they're like, that's a good point. I'm going to do that. Right. So again, this is the public platform is the problem that they're speaking from, not necessarily what they're saying.
I think that brings up sort of an interesting thing. And with some of these things, maybe we just sort of address issues that are at large, not so specific with this. One of the things that struck me is that they go to get their temple recommend interview, and the bishop, as I understand it, refuses to ask them the questions. They say, "Oh, is this hard for you right now?" He says, "Yes." And then they say, "Okay, well, we can come back next week and then you can ask us the questions." Here to me is where I start to have ears, perked up a little bit. And maybe you can help me understand this a little bit more, and maybe you can't. To me, I feel like it is the responsibility, a very sacred responsibility of the bishop to ask the questions and for people to be able to answer the questions. Now, what comes from those questions and answers, I think that's where you start to get in like interpretive of Judge of Israel and stuff like that. But to refuse to ask questions, to me, like that, I just went, okay, is this an HVAC guy? Is this a guy who, you know what I'm saying? Like I begin to question, unfortunately, I begin to question like what would motivate me to the point that I would not even be willing to ask the questions. And what I fear is it's someone has told me not to ask the questions, and I can't wrap my head around why I wouldn't ask the questions.
Yeah. So you're looking as far as my perspective on how the bishop handled that? Is that?
Well, like I don't know. I mean, we can say terrible, right? Or we could say great. I just can't wrap my head around on like the gatekeeping aspect of not asking the questions.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is the thing where, man, if I could like insert myself, like suddenly appear and take that bishop aside and be like, hey, let me give you a little coaching on how to do this. Because it's not necessarily that you're acting outside of your authority in this, but the way you're doing it is making it a bigger issue than it is, right? I mean, if the bishop had concern, and this is where I would ask him, maybe there's more context here, so I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but why did you wait for them to come in for a temple recommend if you had concerns to suddenly spring that on them, right? Because it's not a question about should he ask the questions or not. I mean, at the end of the day, he should probably just ask them the questions because he didn't wait to address his concerns until that moment. So ask the questions, and then maybe at the end say, listen, you've answered all the questions as far as the quote unquote right answers. However, here's some concerns I have, and that's why as a bishop I'm going to make the decision to not renew your recommend. But again, that's such a terrible place and context to then spring that on them, right? So to me, it's more like ask the questions, get the issue the recommend, and then say, hey, I've got some concerns. Can we continue this conversation? How can we do this in a way where everybody feels heard and seen and understood, and go from there, right?
Yeah, but I don't know that you answered the question. Like I can't ever foresee a scenario where we don't do the questions.
Well, I mean, but the questions at the end of the day, it's not about the questions as much as how the bishop is interpreting their answers. Right?
Sure.
So if he's just getting ahead of it and saying, I'm not going to ask the questions because no matter how you answer these questions, right?
Yeah, but so that to me, that is where I start to go, well, I already know how you feel. So I'm not even going to bother to ask. And to me, where we have like, these are the questions that allow people or don't allow people to enter the temple, like that seems pretty, important. So let me give you a for instance. And one of the things that I thought was sort of fascinating about this, I'm not defenders of these folks at all, but they have a son who's going on a mission. They've talked about how they don't pay tithing and that they went in for a temple recommend interview. To me, if maybe you pull this up because it's worth quoting word for word, but the question about tithing, if they don't pay tithing to the church, that to me says, oh yeah, I'm going to ask all these questions. Hey, you have stated before that you do not pay tithing to the church. And as I interpret it, tithing to the church needs to be 10%,
Mhm.
and it's going to the church itself. I am not going to give you a recommend. Like, that to me seems like a part of this that I don't understand, where they were like, oh yeah, we should have got a recommend. They
Yeah.
outwardly said, and whether or not they encouraged people to do it or not, I think is another part of the big deal. But if they're like, oh yeah, no, I am not doing this part that I know is a requisite for me to get into the temple, I don't understand the disconnect where they thought they could get a temple recommend.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine in their mind, when they came to that, are you a full tithe payer? They could honestly say they were, because they were paying tithing in the way they saw and interpreted tithing. Right.
Sure.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
is the question within the temple recommend as we have it now, are you a full tithe payer as defined by the church, was just 10% to the, or is it, are you a full tithe payer?
I believe it's just straight up, are you a full tithe payer?
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, I guess that's, I don't know. I think that is an interesting sort of part of it. And they fully admit, hey, you know what? If that's the holdup, if you need our money, we'll pay our money to the church and be able to get a temple recommend.
Mhm.
I thought that
Yeah.
was an interesting sort of aspect to that whole thing. The anything more on the tithing part with you for that?
I don't think so.
The thing that I thought was sort of interesting at the end is, it seems like they take the last, I don't know, 30 minutes or so. I listen on double time, so who knows how long it was. But where they talk about like, hey, here's all the good that we're doing and hope that matters.
Mhm.
And I just think, I just have to wonder, when we have things like this, it's very much the reason why when I went through my disciplinary counsel, I didn't bring anyone with me.
Hmm.
They give you the opportunity. Would you like to bring some character witnesses, essentially, that
Yeah.
can speak to who you are as a person? I didn't bring anyone with me for two reasons. One, it's gone to the stake level. They have certainly made up their mind. And two, am I going to bring in anyone who's going to say, oh yeah, he's a real jerk? You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
You guys are smart. This is a guy we need to get in. Am I going to do that? No, of course I'm not going to do that. It felt like a moot point as far as that goes. And so to have the end of it be that I was excommunicated, it was a thing where I was like, yeah. And the catch about it that I think is so difficult, and I don't think that you can truly understand unless you have been in the situation, is that you feel so helpless being excommunicated, whether
Mhm.
for a right reason or a wrong reason. The way that it plays out is, I'm excommunicated. Well, you have the right to to appeal this. Okay. So if I appeal this, what I'm outwardly saying is, I don't trust the priesthood that came to this conclusion, and I would like to take this somewhere else. And
Well,
that's
yeah.
going to be received by the priesthood who made the decision to have me be excommunicated as heresy, apostasy, whether it is or it isn't. That is 100%. Like, you feel helpless, because then who are you going to?
Mhm.
I'm going to go, okay, say it's at a stake level, so I'm going to go to an area authority level. All right, area authority, this person who you know, who is functioning within the calling, who has done the things, and this person who, whatever the thing was, I was 22 and it was sexual, but not that sexual things. Like, are they
Yeah.
going to align with me, or are they going to align with the person who is within the church holding the calling and all that? And you just, it's, there isn't a hope that they're going to be like, yes, you know what? Actually,
Mhm.
wrong. We're going to go with the person here. And you want to hope that there is. You feel like it could be. It just leaves you to go like, I guess I accept this.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's a great example of how I can articulate something when I feel a level of dissatisfaction without dunking on the church. I think just from being a leader and experiencing it from the leader's side of the desk with this process of membership councils and so forth, and talking with countless individuals who've gone through it themselves, and even mentoring individuals as they go through it, the system we could maybe do better at just stepping back and saying, what if we rebuilt this from the ground up? Is there maybe a better way to go about this, respecting all priesthood keys involved, respecting the seriousness of sin and transgression, and respecting those, and stimulating more than 10% to actually return to the church? I think there's a maybe better approach to do it. We've kind of just tinkered with it as time went on, and it's sort of the model we have now. It's not my it's not my prerogative. If the church wants to do this, okay, like I will do my best to support it and understand it. So I completely agree that they're like the stake president or the bishop is like the, what do they say, the jury, the judge, and the executioner, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And oftentimes individuals walk in there a little naive. They've never experienced like something like this when it's the 10th council that the stake president has done or whatever. And
Mhm.
so I always encourage people, even if it's not as serious of, some membership council, even if it's like, oh, this is where my bishop wants to call me in and he has concerns. Like I would immediately, if that was me, I would immediately call somebody, an old friend who's been a bishop, an independent party who understands, what the handbook says and how these processes should go. Because I've heard time and time again where even in innocent like initial meetings where the bishop says something and I'm like, wait a minute, like that's not in the handbook. Like you can't just force me to do this or that, or say I should do this. Like where's that coming from? So someone with experience that's sitting next to you could say, hey, wait a minute, bishop, you said that, but from my time, I understand that like we're actually not supposed to give that guidance, right? So could we just take a step back and reassess this, right? Because we would be crazy unless you're Lori Vallow to walk into a courtroom without legal representation, right? but but we do. You need to walk into someone, not to be like this, angry, attorney style, advocate, but somebody who's like, hey, I've seen this process 30 times. This is
Mhm.
this person's first time. I think
Mhm.
I have a perspective to share here, and maybe we can have a really positive outcome, respecting all the authority and dynamics involved by having kind of an advocate in the room.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, they've decided to remove their name rather than being excommunicated, so they're leaving by their own choice rather than
Yeah.
by, powers that would be somebody else. I think that's sad.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
unfortunate. Yeah.
I think any time that people can be helpful, I think I'll even go a step further, and I think that any time that people want to be a part of the church, shy of my very strong feelings on murder and sexual abuse and physical abuse, I think that we figure out a place for them to be able to be there.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make the issues that they have dealt with go away. It doesn't make them go away. It just now puts it in a us versus them.
Yeah.
And now, really stalwart members of the church can discount everything that they say because it's like, well, they're not members of the church anymore. And we do that. And unfortunately, a lot of what they say could be helpful to people. And
Yeah.
I don't know. The removal of membership for most people I just think is such I don't know. It is a harsh thing that I am grateful that I'll never be a judge of Israel and never have to worry about it. But listening to this at the gym, I text you and said, "Hey, you know what? If I ever go into something, I don't need you to say anything for me. I just need you to be in the room." And I asked another guy in my ward who I'm particularly impressed with. I would want him. I would want you and he. I don't need, it's not like a power play or anything like that. It would just be like, I need other people to witness what it's
Yeah.
about to be. Or I thought, hey, Bishop, I'd love to record this conversation.
Hmm.
And I think
Sure.
the handbook says don't record conversations, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I forget what I think they've tweaked that because there's been recent instances of that happening. But
Yeah.
you're, yeah, at least having more witnesses in there
Yeah.
who care about you,
Yep.
and of course, I'm sure the bishop cares about them and cares about the stake president does. But again, to have an advocate there that maybe has less emotion in it, because I mean, you would probably agree that it was an extremely emotional process for you,
Yes. Yes.
and so therefore you're more likely to be deeply hurt about it, and that's why many individuals don't return, unfortunately. And so having something there to be like, okay, like even I could turn to you and say, hey, Richie, I can see that you're kind of getting kind of getting worked up over this. Can we take 5 minutes, right? And step out and regroup type of thing. So yeah, definitely advocacy in these processes could go a long way. And as far as the handbook, as far as I'm aware, the handbook is completely open to that. You can bring whoever you want into a meeting, So.
Mm-hmm. If I do bring in a meeting and I've done something, I just want you to not judge me. That's all. I just want you to.
Well, I can't promise you that,
No,
Richie.
you just got to continue to be kind to me. We may
Of
get into
course.
some serious things, and I'll just look at you and go, I don't want to hear it, but I just want you to be here so that I don't know. That was
Yeah.
the thing for me that I know that people make mistakes. Maybe it's the Hammockers, maybe it's the bishop, maybe it's the stake president, maybe it's none of them. Maybe it's mistake is the wrong word. But like where we aren't perfect and I hear things and I just go, oh, it makes me not trust things. It makes me feel on guard about things and knowing or at least trusting the heart of these people to be like, hey, we're just trying to help people out. If that genuinely what it is what it is, and it got a little askew, like it's so hard to be like, out, damned spot, get out. Like I don't understand it.
Yeah. And as we wrap up kind of this focus on this story in this instance, I want to give and invite the audience to give as much grace as possible, everybody involved. One, like I mentioned earlier, we'll never hear the bishop side of the story, the stake president side of the story. So let's assume best intentions are there. And then with the Honaker side, like I'm afraid they're listening to this and I agree with some of these processes that were taking place in general, in principle. I do have a lot of concerns with the content they produced online and whether it was or wasn't a helpful resource to individuals who are doubting. And for them, I give as much grace as I can. And if they ever wanted to reach out to me, I think I met Valerie once. If everyone want to reach out to me and say, all right, I really don't understand why our content was seen this way. Can you help us understand that? I would be more than happy to go through several episodes with them and say, oh, this right here, like this is not a helpful way to frame it. It's not a faith promoting way. And yes, we know that there's complexities in the church, but there's a variety of other ways that actually stimulate more faith and stimulate better mental health because of that. So anyways, grace to all involved.
All right, Grace. I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Hey, Richie, do you know that the handbook has an AI engine in it now?
What? Go on.
Speaking of the handbook, if you have any questions about like what Richie just said or Kurt just said, is that really true? You can go into your gospel library. And when you go to the handbook section, up pops this search assistant.
Go on.
And it will do AI. It's an AI engine, right? That will answer questions about what's in the handbook, right? And so I asked, let's see here.
Can I record my meetings with my bishop?
Yeah. Can I record my meetings with my bishop? I ask it. Oh, it's thinking. It says recording meetings with your bishop is not permitted. Interviews and other meetings between leaders and members should not be recorded, whether they are conducted in person or virtually. This policy helps maintain the confidentiality and sacredness of these interactions. Please consult the handbook to verify the accuracy of the answer, because AI it can make stuff up. I asked it, can the bishop cancel church? And it said, the bishop cannot cancel church membership. And it went on, and I'm like, no.
No, not
wow,
church
that
membership.
escalated quickly.
Church.
But anyway, so kind of a cool tool. If you have questions about the handbook and you don't like, searching it out or reading it, you can just ask the AI. So
I would welcome to contact at theculturalhall.com what we should name our AI tool. Because I'm a fan of Shiz. Hey, Shiz.
Is that, let's see, Shiz is in Ether, the book of Ether, right?
That sounds okay. I wanted to say Alma. But yeah. Hey, Shiz. I don't know.
Yeah, or just I don't know, elder AI or
no, come on.
Is that silly?
No, it's got to be something that is like Korihor. I felt like was probably not the right brand for it.
Well, what's like a figure in our culture or in scripture of like an individual who wasn't entirely accurate or honest at all times? There's got to be somebody. But
hey, Jay Golden.
Jay Golden, that's a good one.
Hey, Bruce R.
Like, hey, if it
Am
swears
I gonna-
at you, whatever. That's just Jay Golden for you.
Yeah, Jay Golden is the funny one, and Bruce R is the one that takes it way too serious, and you have to be very careful about what
Or
it says.
I shouldn't bring this up. This is kind of a black guy in our history, but remember Paul H. Dunn got in trouble for
Oh,
making up stories. I love you, Elder Dunn. I'm sure you've repented, but yeah, he got in trouble for claiming he was in the major leagues or something, but he
yeah. Hey,
wasn't.
Paul
So,
H. Nah,
yeah,
or what? H. Paul Dunn. Hey, Dunn. I don't know. You have to think about what you're gonna say out loud. That's why
yeah,
shiz is
yeah.
so great.
All right,
Except
shiz
that
it is.
any BYU double NCAA basketball game, phones are going off like crazy with the Gospel Library app. Shiz. Oh yes. What can I do for you?
Hey, shiz. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The other kind of story that I thought was interesting. I don't know if you even had a chance to look at this yet, but there is an update to the essays on the church.
Gospel Library
Yeah, the
resources.
Gospel Library essays. Have you seen this?
I saw it. I have not dug into. It looks like they've got race in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, women's service and leadership in the church, and
Yeah.
religion and science. So these are some hot button topics.
Well, I think it's interesting, and so I don't want to assume anything by it. But one thing that in just like a quick scroll that I noticed about it is that fairly prominently within the context of this, there was a quote from Sister Browning, which, if people don't know who Sister Browning is, she is a counselor in the
Primary
presidency.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And she is a person of color, and I thought that was significant. So I've already reached out to W. Paul Reeves. So if you follow the Cultural Hall, hopefully that will be a future interview. He collaborated with Deseret Book to write that mini book on race and the priesthood. He does.
Let's
a ton
talk
of work.
about race and the priesthood, I think, right?
Yeah. So I would be curious as to his thoughts around some of the changes, because they made a point to say, "Hey, this is new. This is out." So that may be a future episode of the Cultural Hall.
Yeah, and I think in general, this should almost be like required reading. Like it's almost like the church to say, "Hey, we're taking 3 weeks off from Come Follow Me, and we're just going to dive into these new topic," because oftentimes they just get lost in the shuffle, or there's so much content, and where there's so much that we can benefit from really leaning into these resources the church.
Well, and
Together,
anecdotally, you hear the story about the guy who teaches the lesson to the Aaronic priesthood because it's the teacher's choice or whatever. And then he gets called into the bishop and said, "Where did you get this information?" And he says, "I got it from the gospel essays." And the bishop didn't know. Though that seems sort of, excitable. I'm sure there are things like that where,
I hope
where people are like,
we're
"Where do you
past
get
that,
that?"
but yeah,
The Gospel Library app right here.
in the
This
church's
thing.
app,
Yeah, the resources we are sought or taught to seek out, these resources.
Yeah, because it breaks my heart. I've heard of people actually being thrust into a faith crisis by coming across, these gospel topic essays, which breaks my heart. And even in that podcast that we both listened to out of New Zealand, someone in their faith crisis was stimulated by reading the new book Saints, the Saints volumes, and I was like, whoa, like, man, it just helps me gain new perspective. Like, wow, this is like people. This information hits people differently, not because I'm better, they're better, or worse, or whatever. It's just different.
Yeah, it's Heaven's Helpline is what you're alluding to. You had the opportunity to listen. We're rounding an hour right now, so we got
I'm good to
5
keep
minutes.
going if you want, but
No, we got 5 minutes.
Okay.
What did you think about it? This is a research thing. This guy, Murray Jones is his name. He's in New Zealand. He was going to do a big, I don't know if this is an actual term and this is saying something. He was going to do an expose about the church and its finances. And then when he got into it, people were like, "Oh, you think the finances? You need to know about the helpline that people can call." And then gets into some of the issues of abuse that have occurred in New Zealand. What did you think of the show?
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, obviously well done, but I don't know if you've ever heard of the documentary effect. Like, there's something about even stating facts that feel more neutral, but they got the sort of that music behind it, the eerie music behind it, that it hits differently. To me, like the arguments and conclusions, and I pray for all those that they interviewed who have left the church and really went through abuse, but when you take specific anecdotal experiences and try to generalize them, it just misses the mark for me. I just felt like a lot of the conclusions were weak. Everything from the churches. I see no reality where the church is hiding this because they're trying to protect their name, when in reality the guy was, for one instance, the guy was like barely active. The church would gain nothing with, protecting or hiding the terrible actions of this one person. So I don't know. It was a lot of documentary effect. And so I don't know. And then I felt like the conclusions were pretty weak. But anyways, what did you think, Reggie?
And I want to tread lightly. I
Yeah.
think more can be done.
Of course.
I think the fact that these things occur, that being sexual abuse, and then the individual talks to the bishop about it, and authorities are never notified. These crimes are committed, and authorities are never notified.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with that. I hope and pray that the attitude of like, the bishop will deal with it, we don't need to go to the cops, is dead, and that we burned that carcass and, all of that, whatever that is. I hope that we go, if people do illegal things, they must face illegal consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe legal consequences is what I meant to say. But like, if you do whatever, you should not be able to be protected. And
this is some of those cultural things that come to the surface where I'm like, at what point did anybody communicate to you that if you tell your bishop something, or if you witness a crime or know of a crime, that you should only tell your bishop, right? I think if you ask any general authority or the church itself or any attorney saying, hey, if me as a Latter-day Saint, if I witness or know of a crime that another Latter-day Saint is committing, should I not call the police? They would say, of course you should call the police. Now, in the context of a church leader and, the pastoral dynamics happening there, that's maybe something different. But yeah, go call the police, right? Like that's the helpline available to everybody of us. So, and I would agree with you that there is more that could be done. However, I would also argue that our church and the structure and the systems in place does more than any other institutional church that I've seen in the world. And I would stand on that debate stage and win. So
and win and declare victory. It's interesting to me where that attitude has existed within the culture. Again, I pray that it doesn't exist in it anymore. But I guess what I want is a little bit more of an aggressive standpoint against it, right? So I agree with you. I don't think that any church leader has ever said, yeah, keep it secret. I don't think so.
Right.
Or I should say any like authoritative church leader, apostle, prophet, etc. Although maybe not. I'm sort of sweepingly saying something like that. But I do think that, like, if I know that the attitude within my congregation, within my area, whatever, is such as this, and I don't think that that's the way Christ would have it, I don't think that's the way that I think that the church should be represented, I would have a lot of want for, hey, I don't know where this comes from, but I need to make sure that everyone is very clear this is not how we feel, as opposed to, can we get some comment from this? Well, we don't encourage this at all. We don't think that this should be. Like, this is our standpoint, and this is what we will always say. And there is an actively, we are trying to change any sort of thought that people would have that this is what we would want. And I think that's maybe the discrepancy, or the canyon between maybe where we are and where we could be and what we could do. But I don't know how you do it. I don't know why we don't do that. I don't know if we don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's obvious, there's some attorneys involved in behind the scenes, and I'm not an attorney, nor do I want to be one. But
nor do you play one on TV.
Nor do I play one on TV or on podcasts. Anyways, but it is interesting. Like, why? It'd be interesting to ask some attorneys, why would an organization like respond that way with just a general statement? Why not be more forthcoming with, like, actually, we send this information out or whatever it is. But the last thing I'll say on that is that, and this dynamic comes up in like gun control debates of, like, it's really easy to find instances or anecdotes where it went bad. It's a lot harder to find instances where it went good. And I would estimate for every one instance they find that it went bad, you can find hundreds of where it went good. I mean, I can list off several with when I was a bishop of times I called the legal line and the helpline and there I was like, oh, like I didn't know I was supposed to do A, B, and C. Like I'll do that and actually helped the victim involved or whatever. So that I think it's giving grace to all involved that's the theme of the episode. That I think that there's far more instances where because of the church and the structures they have set up, it goes good than when it goes bad. So
sure. And just because of the kind of person that I am, I want to take what you just said and how it, at least in part, resonated in my ears. Listen, we've got 99. Yeah, we don't need the 1.
Right.
We don't need the 1. We've got 90. Look, guys, super serving the 99, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
We are rocking it with the 99. Can't we be good with 99? Isn't 99 good? Come on. Why are you always telling the story about the 1? It's the 99.
I know, right.
And I think that's just maybe a different sort of take on all that. I'm not coming at you. We're the best friends. Kurt's my only friend.
All you got left, Richie? Nobody else is walking into that council with you.
Yeah. No one else will come to the meeting with me.
Oh.
But it is heartbreaking, and I do feel like some good questions that were raised, and I don't know the answer to this, but one of the things that it says is the church has a hotline for kind of the bishop or the leadership side. But the idea of staffing a hotline for an abused, the victim side of it, I thought that was an interesting question, one I had never sort of pondered about. I mean, even if it's the same helpline, right? Hi, Kurtman and McConkey, were you the abuser or the abused? I'm the abused. Okay, well, we'd like to talk to you. Like I that was a perspective that I.
But isn't the hotline for that the police? Like, that's all they would say. Is like, you should call the police, right?
Maybe. I mean, and maybe that's why they say don't. They don't have something as far as that goes. I don't know. That was just a big question, and I was like, yeah. What do we do? How are we offering help to the victims? And I know we do. It just was a question that I went, I don't know. Is that necessary?
Because to me, if heaven forbid, I find out my daughter's been a victim at a youth activity, and she comes to me and tells me this, I'm not going to say like, well, let's call the church's victim helpline. I'm going to say, no, we're going to call the police.
Yeah.
And naturally, the bishop will find out about it, and this will get taken care of. But if the police are involved, that's where it should be. Right?
Yeah, and I guess for legal matters, right? But like, hey, I'm a therapist and I'd like to, with your consent and you're on the phone, I want to talk to your daughter about the emotional things that she may be experiencing, like maybe more of a therapy thing. I don't know. There were lots of things that I went, I am grateful for what I felt like was pretty succinct and well done of like, boom, 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 boom within that show. So, well, we managed to not talk about anything and talk about everything.
I mean, we didn't even talk about the Amazing Race people, Lori and Scott Thompson. I actually know Lori. She's fantastic. They had a brief segment on the Amazing Race of them meeting in the MTC, which, like you referenced, they did not read President Kimball's "Lock Your Heart" message.
Yeah, I wondered, with you knowing Lori, have you chastised her properly for not?
I should. I've not taken the time to shame her. I will put that on my calendar today. So.
Do it on X. That's where we do those things.
Did you really have to read that article on your mission? Because I did.
Yeah, 1,000%.
So here's a quick funny story is that I had 2 mission presidents. I had one for 1 year, then the other one came in for the last year. And when the new mission president came in, first the first mission president had like just grinded this into our soul of like, if there's anything you don't do, it's call a sister missionary after your mission on a date, because then, all those things, right? Or look at a girl in your local ward you're serving in, with a twinkle in your eye or whatever. And so it was like, even after missionaries went home, it was very clear, like, you don't date even when you go home. You've locked your heart, right? So the new mission president comes in and he shows this big picture of his family, and he's kind of introducing us to their family. And they mention, oh, here's our son, so-and-so. And he met his wife on his mission, in such and such country. And everybody's like, oh my goodness, he's an apostate. Anyways, it was a very awkward moment.
Yes. The way we like to do those things. Yes. I actually, when I got back, I went on a date with a sister missionary, and I went on a date with a girl from one of my wards.
Really? Nice. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, neither
You're
of those
catch,
my first
Richie.
wife. Neither of those my first wife. All right, we're done.
We're done.
We're 70 minutes for crying out loud.
Well, I hope that people listening to the Culture Hall will maybe go over on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this episode and subscribe to This Week in Mormons and Leading Saints while you're at it. And let's share the love. And you, This Week in Mormon people, do the same for Richie, the Culture Hall.
Culture Hall, yeah. We can find us on YouTube. You can find us on wherever you're getting this episode of This Week in Mormons. You can also find us adjacent to Leading Saints. Talk about a lot of the same stuff. We're here. You ain't getting rid of me a second time. That's what I like to say.
That's right.
Although,
and of course, if you're angry at anything we said or you like anything we said, you can go to contact at This Week in Mormons and that'll reach me, or
contact at theculturalhall.com.
Man, that's awesome, Richie. I love you, brother.
I want just in closing, I want to play a game. The game that I want to play is you get, I'm going to read a headline and you're going to tell me.
Oh, come on. You love Matt and Melissa.
You're going to tell me whether you don't know anything about the subject, whether you shouldn't be proposing anything about that subject, or you don't actually understand the grave nature of the thing that you're talking about. So I'll read the headline, and then you go ahead and we'll say,
"Unbelievable, unbelievable." Hey,
listen,
we should swap co-hosts just for 6 months.
They fire shots all the time, and they know it.
They do. They're the only co-host team that says, "What do they say? Like the longest running news LDS news podcast."
Yep.
Shots fired.
And they do that because of this. But here's the deal. They're not. They are not. That is it. That is all.
It's technicalities.
By purchasing a thing does not make you the longest running news podcast.
What if we get Jeff back on here for an episode?
Yeah, if you get Jeff back on, I'll grant that.
For one episode.
No, I'd grant it forever. I'd grant it in perpetuity.
Because we've had him back on a few times.
But. Yeah, but he's no longer a part of it.
Okay. All right. He's always a part of it. He's in my heart.
Yeah.
Love the
and
man.
He'll be there from this day onward now.
He's not dead, by the way. He's just moving on with his life.
So. Yeah, just decided that he wanted to keep his church membership. All right. We hope that this episode has nourished and strengthened your body.
And if you didn't feel well this time, that you'll join us next time.
And when the time comes, you'll be able to travel home in safety. In the meantime, Chris at Alpine Lakes Travel, Debbie Wanless, Chocolate Cake Bites Podcast, and the Tiger with a U will be saving a seat for you on the back row of
This Week in Mormons.
Save me a seat, it's sure to be neat on the back row.